Hello and welcome everyone to episode 4 of Island Minds. Today we are joined by Liam. Now, Liam, thank you so much for coming onto our podcast. How's lockdown been for you?
Not too bad right now. Things are pretty good. All things considered. Lockdown has been a roller coaster somewhat, as I'm sure it has been for everybody, and I'm very much enjoying the fact that there feels like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we are hopefully coming out of this situation into a brighter world. But as I say, it has definitely been it's been a roller coaster. Obviously, I work in the arts, so that industry has been hit incredibly hard. And is really just starting to try and find a way of getting back on its feet. So roller coaster. That would be the word I would use for my experience of lockdown. Definitely.
I think most of our listeners would relate to that. I think roller coaster is probably one of the most accurate and appropriate terms for what we've all just lived through.
Initially, I, in a weird way, quite enjoyed the first lockdown in a sort of bizarre kind of way. Yeah, I mean, obviously the news and things like that was horrifying to see the numbers kind of shooting up and things like that. But in terms of kind of being given permission to down tools and not stress about having to hustle and grind and graft and all that sort of stuff, it was, you're allowed to sort of bask in a little bit of unemployment, like guilt-free, which doesn't happen very often in my industry. So I was kind of taking advantage of that. Sorry, I've steamed straight ahead. You should do the rest of your introductions. I apologise.
No, that's fine. And I think me and Tia also had a similar experience in that there were parts of lockdown that we enjoyed because we work in a local tourist attraction, but the job that me and Tia specifically do is we look after their donkeys. And obviously, pandemic or no pandemic, those donkeys need looking after. And me and Tia were actually the only 2 members of staff that were retained to do that job. So we spent the whole of lockdown in a castle looking after donkeys and being outside all the time. So, while I would really rather the pandemic hadn't happened, there were elements of it for us that were kind of wonderful.
I work in education, so we had to shift to online learning, which is really hard because I teach in the primary sector. Yeah. And so a lot of children don't really have the access to the computers, and I'm more of a kind of get up and walk around the classroom and get down and work with the children. It was really tough to do it online, but I was kind of pleased that it was able to keep going. Sure. But my commute to work got a lot shorter, probably about 20 seconds from bedroom to school, which was that work. And then when you finish, you can kind of switch off for the day.
Yeah.
Which I kind of enjoyed. So I know what you mean, Liam. It was enjoyable to a certain point of view, and we couldn't go anywhere, so not forced. Found myself spending a lot more time with my wife and speaking to friends online. And even though we were in the house, I kind of communicated more with people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally had a very, very similar experience. We have a 2-year-old, and of course he was like 10 months when everything kicked off March last year. So on the one hand, we feel incredibly blessed in a lot of ways that we've had so much time with him and see him grow and things like that, and there wasn't the necessity to put him into a daycare and things like that, so we could kind of carry on with our work and all that sort of stuff. So as nightmarish as it has been, there have been some positives to take from it, and that's what I've sort of been trying to kind of keep hold of throughout. It's almost been harder now that the pandemic feels like it's coming to an end to sort of transition back into what is this new normal, and our industry hasn't really fully gotten back onto its feet yet. So there's definitely a lot of anxiety around like how is this going to work? What's it going to look like? How's it going to affect us? But we just have to strap in and go for the ride and see where it takes us. Yeah, totally.
So for our listeners, you would have heard another voice in there. So we are also joined today by Si, who is a local islander who I've known for a very long time. So Si is going to be here as well, talking about his experiences. And we do also have Tia here somewhere. She is here listening in and will hopefully be chiming in as and when she can. So Liam, could you just tell our listeners a little bit about you and your fascinating career?
Sure. I'll put fascinating in air quotes. So yeah, I'm my name's Liam Garrigan. I am an actor and have been pretty much all my life, I suppose. But I've been working professionally for kind of coming up for 20 years now, and I work predominantly in television and film, and I've done occasional bits of theatre and things like that. I started out when I was probably about 5, going to youth theatre in Hull, which is where Si's from. And Si and I both went to school together, and we were involved in school plays and all sorts of stuff. And my main hobby, I suppose, outside of school was with the Northern Theatre Company, which was a youth theatre amateur dramatics set up. And that's where my obsession, I suppose, my love, my love of it came from. And when I finished my A-levels, I didn't really have a clue about what I wanted to do. And what I did know was that I didn't want to go on any more essays. So my mum suggested I maybe have a crack at drama school. And I did, and got very fortunate and got into Guildhall School of Music and Drama down in London. I had 3 amazing years there, and left there and went to work, first of all, for the BBC. Went to do Holy City. Spent more or less a year on that show. And then everything's kind of, sort of snowballed from there, really. I feel very, very fortunate that I've had a very varied and exciting career so far to date. And fingers crossed it continues.
I'm sure it will.
Sort of me.
I have to say, it's so super cool to be talking to you.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for inviting me along. I think these kinds of conversations are really important, especially in light of the year that we've sort of been through. So thrilled to be part of it. And I'm really thrilled that you watched Once Upon a Time. That's
in lockdown, me and Tia used to do virtual date nights where we would watch the same show, and we would on WhatsApp be voice recording each other. And Once Upon a Time was one of those things. We had really good intentions at the start. We were going to do it every week, maybe twice a week. I think we got to like episode 4 of season 1 and then it fell off. But we're both huge fans and super excited that it's now sort of, on streaming services so that we can just watch it anytime.
Yeah. It's the show, my involvement in the show finished in 2016, I think it was 2015, 2016. And they did another couple of seasons after the one that I was involved in. And it's sort of been put to bed now, but still 3-4 years on, it still has this amazing fan base. And it really struck a chord with a lot of people. I get messages and things like that on social. I'm terrible at social media, but I do get when I do remember to go on and check it. There's usually a message or two from fans of the show, which is amazing. Yeah, it was honestly one of the top 3 jobs, if not the best job I've ever had in terms of the engagement with fans and things like that, and suddenly it was a show that I very, very quickly became aware had this intense fandom around it, and they were incredibly welcoming, and you really felt sort of swept up into this crazy, mad, exciting, fantastic, fabulous, bonkers club almost. And it was an absolute thrill to be part of, and all the cast were superb. And it was filmed in Vancouver, so I got to go and spend a bunch of time in British Columbia, which was amazing. I've got nothing but good things to say about that show. It was fantastic. If I could do it again, I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
It's so nice to hear that. I think
I sense a remake coming back.
Yeah. Bring back King Arthur. Bring back Arthur.
I mean, me and Tia have been fans of it since it first on TV, and it's been lovely to see, like, now it has become almost like a cult classic. If you ever go on Tumblr or Reddit, Once Upon a Time is a 100%. Huge hashtag. So it's really nice to hear that your experience was so good when you know that a show you love so much is so enjoyed by the people on it and they're having a good time making it. It makes it even better. It adds another layer to it, which is lovely.
Absolutely.
Was it strange being called back to be King Arthur in a different film? Like Arthur in Transformers.
Yeah, that was
same character with two different directors saying, right, I want you to play Arthur like this kind of obsessive person about the dagger. Now I want you to play King Arthur, but there are Autobots.
Completely, absolutely. It was crackers. As I finished on Once Upon a Time in like I think it was the March or the April, and came back to the UK and then back onto the audition merry-go-round, the hamster wheel, if you like, and suddenly the email came through saying, we've got an audition for you. It's to play King Arthur. And I thought it was a wind-up. I was like, really? I've just done that. But yeah, I went down and got to meet Michael Bay, which was terrifying because it's Michael Bay. And he was like, yeah, cool. I want you to be my King Arthur. I thought, I wonder how this is going to go down. But yeah, it was a very different type of King Arthur in Transformers. It's probably much more of this sort of classic heroic knight in shining armor type vibe, whereas in Once Upon a Time he was this obsessive, quite sort of broken kind of guy who felt completely illegitimate and was searching for legitimacy. So yeah, it was great to go and revisit it, but it was a completely different experience. Hugely thrilling, really exciting, but yeah, I wonder if I get to play it 3 times, is it like the World Cup? Do you get to keep it forever?
Keep the armor. You get to keep the armor.
Completely. Yeah, totally. I keep Excalibur. That'd be great. Put it up on my wall.
Talking of the World Cup, because we need to get it out of the way, is anyone excited about the Euros? I know it's not the World Cup, but it seemed like a nice slide into the fact that we're in the Euro final tonight.
Absolutely. Well, I'm guessing by the time this podcast goes out, we will either be, everyone will know the result. And I mean, I will certainly be watching it tonight.
Yes.
I cannot call it. It's absolutely 50-50.
It's really going to be tight, isn't it? The Italians are quite decent.
It's the
England
Italians.
looking decent.
We look fantastic. Look, best we've ever done. Yeah. But it's the Italians. We never beat the Italians.
Be a funny tournament now.
Here's hoping that all the listeners are screaming, going, "It came home! It came home! We did it!
And we haven't just brought back horrible flashbacks of our great defeat.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, everyone's crying. Everyone's weeping now. Weeping. Oh, the wounds.
Just bringing it back to, Tia has officially finished lunch. Well, why don't you unmute yourself rather than writing to her?
Oh, I was nervous.
Hello, Tia.
Hi, Tia.
Hi. I was just going to say I'm leaving the video off because I've been working with donkeys and no one needs to see me.
I see you every day.
Okay. Liam doesn't need to see me.
I have no idea what you look like. Then
you can have wonderful imagination about.
Oh dear.
Welcome. Nice to hear your voice.
Thank you. Nice to meet you virtually.
So now Tia's with us. So a big part of why we started this podcast was to help normalize conversations that people are having about mental health, because despite how far we've come, it's still a very stigmatized subject. It's still a very judged subject. Me and Tia both experienced it ourselves. We've both experienced discrimination because of mental health. So we want to bring people together to talk about their experiences, to hopefully reach more people and make them feel more comfortable about their own experiences. So Liam, what's your personal understanding of mental health, and do you have any experiences with mental ill health?
Well, to answer the second part of that question, yeah, absolutely. the acting, the entertainment industry consists of never-ending rejection. Really, that's the sort of the main part of an acting career is, you know, putting your all into an audition, sending it out there, and it getting knocked back. And initially, when I first kind of got to the industry, it's you understand you understand it's part and parcel of it, and so you sort of rationalize it. But over the years, it's probably not the same for everybody, but for myself, it does erode your sense of self, it has eroded my sense of self, and more and more, it's harder and more effort to kind of, you know, put on the armor to sort of shield yourself from all of that. So that's my experience of mental ill health, and that sort of has manifested in I guess bouts of depression, anxiety, and it's something that's kind of crept up on me really over, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years, and it'll be there for a period of time, and then it'll sort of disappear. I'll be in a good place for a while, and then it'll sort of kind of creep back in again. And it's only really been through the last year that I've actually decided to take some positive steps to address it, and try and put some kind of practices in place to help mitigate these feelings and emotions that I have. And it tends to be patterns of thought that are destructive and don't aid one's sense of self-confidence. So that's what I'm kind of in the middle of, or at the beginning of, really looking at. And actually the whole thing came about because a good friend of mine, Taner Hassan, we've known each other 20 years from when I first moved down to London. He is an addiction therapist and works out in Essex. And he has started online movement with another guy called Den Champ, who's an ex-Royal Marine, called Start Your Day on Purpose. And he reached out to me, and he was trying to as many videos as he could of various people from various walks of life. I think he was trying to get people who had maybe some sort of profile or something like that. And he asked me if I would do a little video and want to be involved. And it was a very simple thing. It was literally just like straight to camera. Hey, everybody, just want to say, start your day on purpose. And he would have 20, 30, 40, 50 of these videos, and he would kind of put them out on social media and hopefully try and start a conversation around what is this thing. And then that turned into him hosting sort of like half an hour, 45-minute chats on Instagram Live. And he asked me if I wanted to do that. And I was absolutely terrified because, I mean, up until that point, I had never spoken to anybody about how I felt and the ups and downs and the roller coaster emotional roller coaster that, you kind of find yourself. And I said yes, mostly because he was my mate and I didn't want to let my mate down. But the closer it came to sitting down and having the conversation, the more anxious I got about it. And then we had the conversation. I don't know how many people watched, maybe 40 or 50 people or something like that. But I felt great afterwards. And it felt like just beginning to have that conversation lifted a weight. And so from that point, I spoke to him again privately and was like, yeah, I think it'd be a good thing for me to explore a little further. So yeah, that's how my journey, I suppose, began. That felt like a very long-winded answer, and I hope that answered your question.
It absolutely did. It's really good. You seem very self-aware of your mental health, and you said that you've started putting into place things that you can do to protect yourself. And that's such an amazing thing to be able to do, such a positive thing. It's not easy. And it's also not easy coming face to face with mental health, because for so long, it's been perceived as, say, a weakness, when really it's the same as our physical health. You know, we try and look after our physical health as much as possible. So why on earth are we not doing it for our mental health? I mean, so it's really good that you have that self-awareness, and I'm really grateful that you've shared that experience as well. I think we so often hear such negative stories about mental health, but yours is actually full of so much positivity and hope and things like that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I hope it doesn't. Yeah, I hope it does help in some way. I would also say that I very much feel like I am right at the very beginning of my journey, so I have a lot of hope and positivity for, you know, like a good outcome and things like that. But I'm very aware that, you know, it's probably going to be a bumpy road, but I'd rather it was a bumpy road to a better place than just continuing on a bumpy road, not really knowing what direction I'm going in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So as I say, I'm trying to put things in place and be more mindful of myself, my mindset and things like that. It's probably a little bit trial and error at the moment, but I have an amazing wife who's hugely supportive, and so I feel very blessed.
Do you find it quite hard because it's quite a long process? Because I know Beth's a musician, isn't she? And you do the acting. It's quite a long process to you know, you get the part, or she might start writing a song, and then you might have to do, especially with some of the roles you play where you have to be physically might go down to the gym, then you might have to go on set, you might have to go away, she might have to go into the studio. How do you kind of keep the focus for such a long period, whereas in a play you might step on stage, do 2 hours and then off? How do you kind of keep the focus for like a longer extended period of time?
Do you mean the focus in terms of focus on the job, or focus on sort of
your own well-being, really?
Oh, well-being. Well, as I say, that's the sort of trial and error bit at the moment. We also have a 2-year-old, right? So we're still trying to figure out how our careers function while we bring up a 2-year-old. So right now there are a lot of competing factors that, you know, carry with them degrees of uncertainty and therefore anxiety. So I guess a lot of the work that I'm doing at the moment is trying to sort of mitigate the anxiety that I have around what the future is going to look like for us, while at the same time being fully aware that I'm in an industry that is intensely fickle and I have absolutely no control over it. And so the clash of having no control and being anxious about it and trying to sort of grab hold of some sort of control that is not there is that's quite a tightrope to try and balance your way along, you know. So yeah, I don't actually have a clear answer for that. That is actually what the challenge right now is, to find our path through this. Yeah. The other thing that I've become aware of, that is that a lot of the ups and downs that I have experienced really attributed to the highs and lows that go with the career that I'm in. It's feast or famine. And so there are times where, you know, you pick a job and, you know, your adrenaline goes through the roof, you're excited, you're on a high, you're on the job, it's a great job, it's hard work, it's long hours, but you're in it and you're getting stuck in, you're getting your hands dirty, and you know you're working, and then it all comes to a close, and then you have the sort of the calm down, if you like, from that, and then you're back on the audition treadmill. And so my peaks and troughs always felt like they were with the peaks and troughs of the industry, but I have to sort of like figure out how I as an individual can be better most of the time, as much as I possibly can be. And so I have to sort of like separate myself from the industry, and my mental health has to be something that I work on 24/7 just for myself. And I can't use the highs and the lows that I experience in the industry as my medication, if you like.
I think
do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I think me, Tia, and Si understand what it is you're expressing. You can't use your peaks and troughs as a way of masking or managing your mental health. That's just not sustainable. It's really refreshing to hear someone have that clearer picture. You might not feel like you have a clear picture, but from what you're saying, it sounds that you've already set yourself up for a more positive journey.
Yeah, I think I know what I would like to achieve. I know where I would like to get to.
Yeah.
I have very little idea right now of how I get there, how long it's going to take to get there, and all that sort of stuff. But I have a goal in mind.
Good.
And that goal in mind is, regardless of what happens in the industry, I am, as much as I possibly can be, the best version of myself.
Yeah.
As often as I can be. One of the things that I have found myself doing often when in local is sort of looking back at the good times that sort of happened just after I left college, and everything was sort of easy and free flowing and all that sort of stuff. And there's a sort of yearning to want to recapture that youthful exuberance and the free spiritedness that I kind of, I don't know, I've sort of romanticized, I think, at this point that I was living in my sort of early mid-20s, late 20s, things like that. And I've sort of come to an understanding that that's a helpful process for me, to be looking backwards this way at what has been. It's not about trying to recapture that. It's about trying to find a new centeredness now, which is interesting because that's a lot of what acting is. A good performance, you do it once and something happens, something intangible happens for that one moment, and then you can, as a run the risk of trying to repeat the trick, and so you work very hard to recreate exactly what happened organically and magically that one time. But you can't do that. It doesn't ever work like that. You try and grab harder and harder onto the performance to try and recapture that thing. It's completely elusive. So you have to simply just surrender yourself to what happens in the moment, and then you'll have a completely new and exciting experience. And so if I can sort of translate that into everyday life, that would be nice. We used to have had an amazing teacher when I was at drama school called Martin Connor. I had lots of amazing teachers at drama school, but Martin Connor was really something. And he always talked about the critic that we have that lives in the back of our head. And as an actor, that critic always rears its ugly head at the most inappropriate time on stage and comments, chirps in your ear constantly. That wasn't very good. They don't like you. This is not going very well tonight. You were so much better last night. You should really give up on it. Did you mean this? And he called it, excuse my language, the little fucker. Sorry. And so that image of this little critic has really stayed with me, and I could sort of personify my thought processes that I'm trying to get a handle on. It would be exactly that I have this critic that's here all the time, that's not commenting on my performances, although it is always, but it's also commenting on me as an individual and me as a person and a human being, and sort of like chips away at me. And I know intuitively that I'm not a bad person. I'm not a amazing person. I'm not bad. I'm just a blur. I'm just a person, right? I'm normal. But this little critic sits there and goes, and finds the thing that like hurts and just constantly like prods it and prods it and prods it. So yeah, I want to get rid of, not get rid, because you can't get rid, but just accept that that's there. And maybe just get it to be a bit quieter from time to time. Like, stop shouting so loud. You're very loud.
Hannah, do you mind if I just interject?
I was looking at your facial expressions going, that little critic.
I thought I'd brave, by the way. I felt like a really weird lurker without my camera on. So I was just laughing because, we talk about this all the time, but I've just written a script about this very thing because when I had therapy, there's a recommended tactic that you give your brain, or the voice in your brain that's saying all those things, another name to just sort of add a degree of separation so that it doesn't feel like you're hurting yourself in that way. It's like just someone else. So little fucker is a great name. would have liked that. Call mine Maria because, Tia Maria.
Yeah.
Very original. But yeah, I've written a whole script about it, except in the script it becomes a physical manifestation, which I thought would be very funny. But cool. It's I think everyone has one. But we don't talk about it.
Absolutely.
Do you find it hard, Liam, that people look at specifically like actors and I suppose stand-up comedians as well, perhaps teachers, as people who are grounded or seeming grounded and seeming professional and with it all the time, that people sometimes look at people and go, well, you can't have any mental health issues, you can't have a critique because you're playing this person who's super confident, you're playing this king, or standing in front of a class of 30 children, or you're standing on stage telling jokes. You can't have any, because how could you do that? How could you stand on stage if you had a mental health? That's surely not possible.
Yeah, definitely. That you see people having those conversations or making those comments. Definitely, all the time. The idea that I understand that there's for someone who doesn't spend time on a stage performing or anything like that, that the idea of that must seem like incredibly brave. It takes a lot of courage to stand up in a room full of people and tell a story or whatever. For me, it's never my words, it's somebody else has written it, so I have it, it's like putting on a character is like putting on a bit of armor, really. I'm not speaking as me, although there's elements of my life experience that you sort of feed into the reality of the character, but it's not me, it is a character. People who stand up and tell their own story I find amazing, because that's terrifying. You're opening yourself up completely, right? I do see that side, but at the same time, doesn't matter what work you do, doesn't matter what you do at all in life. Everybody's an individual, and at the end of the day, everyone's got bills to pay. They've got hopes and dreams that they will or won't quite achieve, and it doesn't matter what you do.
And courage is such a relative thing, isn't it? I mean, there are things that we maybe perceive as easy things to do, but someone else would find that quite nerve-wracking. I will happily stand on the stage. You ask me to get on a bus to go somewhere, I'm out. I can't, that gives me the absolute horrors. And it's not the bus, I'm not afraid of people, it's just that public transport terrifies me. Tia, I know you have your own anxieties, but you've been to some of the world's most dangerous countries. Like, traveling, Tia is this bloody goddess and hero, and Si, you stand up in front of a class of children. Courage is so relative. You should celebrate that actually people are forever going up against their fears and putting themselves out of their comfort zones.
Completely. And also, I think from a mental health point of view, it's good to recognize what that is in one's self, and allow yourself a little bit of congratulations that that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to stand up in front of a class of kids and impart wisdom. I couldn't do that. That's astonishing. You're traveling, Tia, and so all of those things. It's it's necessary to sort of just go give yourself a break, because what you do in this situation is amazing. It is amazing. I have an issue doing that with myself, because I don't know whether it's a male thing or whether it's a Yorkshire thing, but with that sort of element of self-congratulations, it feels very self-indulgent. And so as soon as I do that, the critic's back going, yeah, what you do? Who do you think you are? You can't say that yourself. Shut up and get on with it.
Get on with it.
Shut up, morning.
Talking of the little fucker, because I'm sure we all have one. All morning I was like, you can't interview Liam Garrigan. Who do you think you are?
All morning I've been sitting there going, what on earth have you got to say about mental health on a mental health podcast? Like, you're such a fraud. This guy is, I'm like, well,
amazing, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. We all need to swap brains.
I think that's a really good point, though, what you've just said, Liam. Like, what do I have to say? Regardless of anyone's experience, whether it's short term or long term, everyone's experience of mental health is valid. There's no rules. There's no, you have to have experienced at least this and this to qualify for our club of mental ill health. It doesn't work like that. There are no rules. Everyone's experience is so valid, even if you've only had like a day, a week, a month, your whole life. All of those experiences are just as valid as each other, and I think that's so important for people to hear, because get imposter syndrome. They think, I shouldn't be talking about this, or I don't have anything to say, when actually you have a lot to say, and your experience is yours. It's personal, and it's just as important as anyone else's.
For sure. Absolutely.
One of the big questions I did want to ask, this is a two-pronged question, really. So my main question is, do you think people working within your profession are particularly vulnerable to mental ill health, whether it be, a healthy work-life balance, challenging workloads, rejection? And then the other side of the question I have is, anyone that has any sort of celebrity status, do you feel like they are more vulnerable? And I'm thinking about, for instance, some of the examples over the last 2 years. Laura Bailey, who is a voice actress, and she was in the second instalment of the Last of Us franchise. She got death threats because gamers didn't like what her character did. I won't give spoilers. Wyatt Russell in Falcon and Winter Soldier deleted his social media presence because fans didn't like his character, so he was attacked. So I think what I'm asking is, do you think people in your position, are you more vulnerable? Should more be in place for people like yourself and your colleagues? And should the public be more accountable for the way they treat actors, celebrities, and anyone that's in the sort of the public eye?
Well, I would say on that second part, absolutely. And I specifically, social media companies need to do much, much more to combat online abuse. I mean, the reports just in the last week of the vitriol and abuse that's been thrown at the England football team, like pre-match, because fans haven't agreed with the team selection or whatever it is horrific. And I have a very tricky relationship, always have had a very tricky relationship with social media, partly because I am very uncomfortable with the sort of requirement to give so much of myself to these platforms. It makes me hugely uncomfortable to post pictures of me at home cooking or whatever it is. I'm just like, I can't do it. I don't like offering that stuff up for critique, I suppose. So I have sort of always purposefully sheltered myself from social media. So I haven't really ever had to deal with any of that sort of stuff. However, I know it's rife, and I know it happens all the time, constantly, to so many people. Lots of actors and musicians that or actors that I've worked with have been subjected to this sort of thing. So certainly somewhere the buck has to stop, and it's really hard to governments to legislate, but social media companies have to do something. They have to. I don't have the answer. I don't know what it is, but it's it can't continue as it certainly is at the moment. It's not getting better. It doesn't seem to be getting better. It's becoming ever more divisive, and it's full of vitriol, and it's a real shame. It's very sad. On the part of the question, our industry more susceptible to mental ill health? I mean, possibly because of the nature of the industry, the amount of rejection, and it's expected that you simply accept that it's part and parcel of the industry. It is part and parcel of the industry, so you do have to accept that. But the fallout from that is the emotional fallout from that, the mental health fallout from that is basically on you to deal with. Yeah. There are no, there's no sort of industry-wide protocol in place to kind of aid in those situations. Again, I don't know how you could, but yeah, certainly, I can really only speak from my own personal experience. But yeah, the way the industry operates and functions, natural byproduct of it is, incredible emotional highs and then incredible emotional lows, and over time, the seesawing of that, for me, just has been harder and harder and harder to deal with. That being said, I don't want to do it, so I've got to find a way of managing it, because it's the only thing I know how to do. So if I don't do it, then I'm kind of up the creek without a paddle. So
you mentioned the expectation on things you have to do, and there was the Wimbledon tennis player whose name escapes me, who refused to do the press interviews afterwards.
Was it Naomi?
That's it. Yeah. And I mean, you see celebrities, and there is, I'll do air quotes, expectations of, you do a film, you do a press tour, you do the chat shows, you do the red carpet, you do the premiere. Is there any of that kind of requirement that you go, I could really do without this? Or do you feel obliged to, do you feel comfortable in saying to the director, no, I can't do a press tour because I'm looking at myself?
I'll be honest with you. Nobody asks to go and do press tours. I'm not a big name. I don't sell enough seats at the cinema, so I haven't had to come up with that. Come up against that sort of pressure.
Outrageous.
I mean, if you, I know how very dead.
Do they not know who you are?
Come on, Graham Norton.
As soon as this podcast goes live, that phone's going to be.
But I can only imagine that, it's a heavy amount of responsibility. If you're one of the lead actors in a Marvel franchise, the amount of pressure on your shoulders, or Star Wars, any of these huge franchises.
If you flick through the channels, you see them on a variety of chat shows, and it seems to be the same questions being asked of them all the time.
For sure.
To the same actors, and they always have the kind of the professional look on their face, where they're kind of nodding and answering questions very genuinely, as if they've never been asked it before. But I can imagine it being real grind. They're going to ask me about this character again, and they're going to ask me about how I got fit to get into the spandex, and they're going to ask me about how and all this kind of stuff. And you think, I feel quite sorry for them in a way.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, from my point of view, I go on a job, and really the only thing I have to worry about is whether or not I do a good job or not. All of that other stuff, I tend not to really have to. I don't really get asked to do all that other stuff. But it's high pressure. That not only do you have to nail your performance on the day when it's shot, but you have all the stuff afterwards that millions and millions and millions of dollars hang off of. You are not just an actor at that point. You're a salesperson for for a studio or for a franchise. That's not to say, like, I've not had the experience. I'd be well up for having a go at it, definitely. But yeah, it would come with a hell of a lot of anxiety. I'd be absolutely terrified.
I was going to say as well, on that sort of topic of social media and the demand, not only do you have the negative side, but as someone who is quite an intense fan, hopefully not to a point where I cross a line with any of the people I'm a fan of, there's such a small degree of separation now between fans and celebrities. You've got Comic Cons, they are on social media, and every single fan sort of expects like that one-to-one and like they're the biggest fan in the world, and that pressure of always having that face on and being good to your fans, but all the time never being able to switch off. That must be so hard. I was
going to say on the social media thing, although my anxieties are my own creation. They all come from me. It's not from anything that I've experienced or had to deal with online. I would like to be a lot better and more comfortable in my own skin to not care as much about what I post. It's ridiculous. I'll spend hours agonizing over a simple Instagram post or something like that, which is why I post one every like 3 months or something like that. But I've had some amazing experiences and got to meet some incredible people, and especially in like the fan art world. There's been some absolutely astonishing pieces of art created of various characters that I've had the fortune to play, and of other characters that I've of other actors that I've sort of worked alongside in shows and things like that, and actually getting to sort of have a bit of a dialogue with the people who create these amazing things has been fantastic. So there is a lot of negativity around social media, and definitely a lot needs to be done around online hate. But also there is a huge amount of positivity to come out of social media. It connects people in ways that we've never really been able to connect before. Yeah. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword, really, isn't it? All you can do is call it out if you see it. Yeah. Call it out for what it is. It's unacceptable behavior. And I do believe that the vast majority of people in the world, vast majority of people who are on social media platforms and things like that, they're good people. They're good human beings. It's the minority that cause these issues. And so, I guess it's on us to call out bad behavior when we see it, and hopefully the tide will turn. 100%. And people realize that it's just not acceptable.
Si, I know you were particularly interested in this next question. So
I was going to ask, have you ever had to play a character with poor mental health kind of health, and then if so, what was the process like? Because I know you did the Terror, where you had to kind of portray Jobson and having to deal with a lot of mental kind of difficulties and exhaustion, things like that. But have you ever had to play a character who's suffered from mental health?
Sure. Yeah, I have. I did a play at the Donmar Warehouse. Maybe 10 years ago, something like that, called Moonlight. It was a Harold Pinter play, and the play is about a father who is on his deathbed, and he is estranged from his sons, and so the stage is set up. On one side of the stage you have the father in the bed with the mother or his wife caring for him, and they have these cantankerous arse man, and she does everything she can to sort of placate him. And on the other side of the stage are the two brothers, and one of the brothers is bedridden, and I played that brother, and the play flips between these two scenarios. The father asking his wife why his sons aren't coming to visit him, and gradually, as the play unfolds, you realise that they've effectively cut themselves off from him because he's he's not a nice bloke. I played the younger brother. He's agoraphobic, prone to deep bouts of depression, and the older brother looks after him. So it's sort of mirrored on either side of the stage. And the older brother's way of trying to rouse his younger brother is that they play these really mad, intricate word games. And at first, when you read it on the page, it's like gobbledygook. It seems like they talk in movie quotes and advertising slogans and things like that. And they play these games, and these games go so far to sort of bring the younger brother out of his depressive state. But eventually, the question of the father and whether or not they're going to go and visit the father comes up, and so the cycle, he goes back down again. So yes, that was it was a very intense experience to play that night after night. We did a run of, I think we were 5 weeks. Yeah, 5 weeks, 8 shows a week. And it was, yeah, I wasn't prepared for the after effects of playing a character like that. I didn't go into it feeling nervous or uncomfortable or unsettled about trying to portray somebody in this situation. But it was my wife, actually, Beth, who said towards the end of the show, she was like, "Are you all right?" Because it had affected me, and I changed, and it took me a good couple of months to sort of get it out of my system. And in terms of the process of getting into that headspace, I didn't do sort of like the conventional research of going and speaking to people with that condition or anything like that. It really was attempting to manifest it from within, really. A lot of sitting and being very quiet and trying to sort of drop myself psychologically into what I think that headspace would be. It was a fascinating play to do. It was mentally exhausting. And as I said, it did take me a while to flush all of that out of my system.
Well, was it a bit more intense? Because I don't know if you know the Donmar, Hannah and Tia, but it's tiny. It's a really tiny theatre. It's like a living room.
They do some absolutely amazing work there, and I'm assuming they still have this set up, but doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a super A-list celebrity that opens massive movies, or if you're, spear carrier number 6, everybody's on the same wage. So it's completely, it's all about equality, and everybody's there just to pull together and make the best show they possibly can. So that was really cool. And they produced some absolutely amazing pieces of work. So yeah. Do you prefer TV or theatre? Well, I suppose they're different, aren't they, really? Because film and TV is maybe different from theatre, but which one do you? Massively. I don't have a preference. There's not one that I prefer over the other. I massively miss the stage. I haven't been on the stage for like 7 years. And that's not through choice. That has simply been the projects that have come my way, have been screen projects. I want to get back on the stage desperately for 2 reasons. One, because it's getting to the point now where I'm starting to get quite fearful of what that experience is going to be like, because it's been so long. And secondly, there is something that you get in theatre that isn't always there in screen work. The rehearsal process is so refreshing once you've been on doing TV stuff or film stuff for a while, because you have the luxury of making as many mistakes as you want for like 3 weeks. and sort of honing this piece into the shape that you want it to be as a collective. It tends to be that in my experience anyway, in screen work, a lot of it initially happens in isolation. I'll be in my room with a script, kind of creating all of this stuff in my head and learning lines and trying to nail down what it is that I want to do. And then you turn up on set and everybody else has been doing that in their own little individual bubbles. And then in a very short space of time, you all have to try and fit these jigsaw pieces together and make it work. So the collaborative aspect of working on the screen is very concentrated. Whereas in theatre, you have this sort of 3 weeks or more sometimes, which feels incredibly luxurious to play and figure it out and things like that. And I think ultimately my experiences of theatre, I've always come out at the end feeling like a better actor. Like I've had a chance to hone my craft in a more specific way than I maybe get to when I do screen work. And you're also honing a very different type of craft. The technical aspects of doing stuff on screen. I'm learning that constantly. So yeah, that's the reason why I want to get back on the stage. It almost feels like a workout, like an acting, going and doing to the gym and doing a lot of bench presses or something like that, but just specifically for acting.
I suppose when you're on stage, you can't stop.
No, completely.
Words. I mean, Hannah would now do some Shakespeare at Carriageford Castle, and you do have that collaborative the rehearsal stuff. But then, as soon as the audience are there, and the director says "go," you're there. You're Oberon, and there's no turning back.
Yeah,
you just
absolutely.
Keep going and going and going, and completely. You kind of cling on for dear life a lot of times. Because I remember there was one speech going, I don't know, I can't remember my line, and it was ill met, which is really commonly known line. Just about to go on stage, it's gone. You have to go on.
You have to go on. And then from somewhere, it comes. It's magic, this magic moment. And that's whether you're on screen or whether you're on stage, the beauty I find, and what I find constantly thrilling and elusive ways in acting is those moments where two people or more in a scene are all just absolutely balancing on this one tightrope, and everybody's managing to do it and keeping afloat and all that sort of stuff. And it's alive and electric and things like that. And beauty of theatre is, you can try and do that multiple times with exactly the same piece. Each piece has a life of its own. It starts out as one thing, and then 3 weeks later you're at the end of the run, and somebody that comes to watch the play at the beginning and at the end of the run will see a completely different play, and you haven't even realized that it's sort of grown and adapted and morphed into something else. It sort of happens outside of what it is that you're kind of creating. It's beautiful.
I mean, you were recently in Terror, which had a very small ensemble cast. Was that a bit more like theatre?
Some ways yes, in other ways no, because the sets that we were shooting on were incredibly restrictive. So the technical aspects of actually getting the shots done meant that it did feel at times quite fragmented, and you were just sort of trusting that the final product, the final show, once these all the disparate pieces of the jigsaw that are shot every single day kind of get put together, works. And we had brilliant directors on it, so you kind of knew that it would. But everything's obviously shot out of sequence, because it was an ensemble piece. There would be like entire sections of the story that you would read in the script, but you would never see a second of it happening. And so, 70% of the show doesn't exist tangibly until you sit down and watch the final product when it's put out on the TV. So yeah, sort of, but yeah, not really.
We were talking about the little fucker earlier, the little cricket
yes.
in the back of one's mind. Since Tia left us, but 60 seconds ago, I have received several texts. She's basically now agonising over everything she said. That critic, when actually she was lovely and
completely, absolutely. We're making points, fantastic questions, and like, got to tell the critic to stop giving her such a hard time. Now, I've been speaking to somebody over the last few weeks about, mental health and things like that, and one of the things that she said, which I thought was really helpful, was that it's not about trying to get rid of the critic, because the critic is not you, a part of you, and basically the critic is actually trying to help you. It's just going about it in the worst way possible. And so trying to reframe what the little fucker is doing by saying, thank you, but this isn't helping right now. Over time, hopefully it starts to quieten down and one begins to have a little more autonomy from it, and it will never go away because it's part of you, but eventually it will sort of get quieter, or it will just sort of change its tactic and not be quite so destructive and vindictive and debilitating. But yeah, it's a bit of you that's trying to help you that has just gone wrong. it's doing it the wrong way, and
it doesn't.
I find that from teaching. When I'm teaching a lesson, there's always that little critic that goes, well, you should have asked this question, or you maybe should have done this. And you find yourself, when I first started teaching, it was constantly there. This is terrible. Why are you doing? Why are you a teacher? But now, as you say, it diminishes over time. It's now going, I probably wouldn't have done that. Never mind. And you kind of just move on.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky to be able to work with new teachers. I go and lecture in pedagogy over at universities, and I do tell the student teachers, it does get easier. It is hard. I think it's the best career in the world, but they're slightly biased. But it is hard. It does get easier. Working donkeys, that's a very good career too. But it does get easier. I'm sure, do you find that yourself, that when you started acting, maybe the critic was a bit louder, or has it kind of changed over time?
It's weirdly, it's almost been the inverse for me. When I started acting, it was almost like I didn't know any better. So, I was just like throwing myself into everything, and everything was a new and exciting experience. So that's what was sort of carrying me along. And the experiences were so much fun that I didn't really have to listen to this little guy. But gradually over time, this little entity that makes all the comments has just gotten a bit louder, and that's what is my mental health journey, I suppose, is trying to deal with that and the anxiety that it causes or brings up in me. So yeah, interestingly, it's been the sort of inverse, and I would be fine if it was simply making the comments on my work and the performances that I was, turning out. But it's when it starts to cross over in like who I am as an individual, and makes, critique of everything that I do and say unfairly, that I'm like, I really need to deal with this now, because it's not helping me in my day-to-day life, and that affects everything, the work that I do, the enthusiasm with which I want to throw myself into a new project. I have to sort of when I have to really, really work hard, manufacture enthusiasm for what I love to do. That's a problem, and I need to deal with that thing, because it's just not going to work for me going forward. So yeah, it's actually been the inverse for me. So
have you spoken to other people in your career, the same kind of level of acting status that you are, do they share stories about similar things? Because there's been a lot of report about footballers being encouraged to open up to their squad mates and say, well, because we're all in the same situation, can we share? Is there a similar thing that happens with actors? Do you say, well, I've got this critic there, and someone goes, oh, well, I've had that too?
I'm hopeful that will be something that will come. As I sort of like kind of continue on this journey. As I say, I feel very much like I'm at the beginning of it. So no, in all honesty, I haven't had those kinds of conversations with my peers. I am sure that everybody has that thing, and everyone will have their own ways of dealing with it. Right now, I don't know, sorting out my own little kingdom as much as I can, and then I'm hopeful to, it'll be easier for me to have those conversations. I'll have a better grasp, a better understanding of my coping strategies and my, and all that sort of stuff. Which is why, podcasts like this are so vital, because it makes these conversations real and tangible, and that can only be a good thing moving forward.
That's the hope. We appreciate we are a little podcast on the Isle of Wight at the bottom of the big island, but ultimately we want to help, and we want to start people on their journeys, or we want to start people having those conversations. Not everyone's going to want to talk about it, but if they can listen, they know that they're not alone, and they know that it's actually not that abnormal to feel these things. And as I said at the beginning of the podcast, and probably 50 times before we started the podcast, I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking to us. The Isle of Wight has such a high volume of young budding actors, and actually there's a lot of talent on the island, and there's probably a lot of very prosperous careers that are going to come from a lot of the youngsters here. I say youngsters, it makes me feel so old. And hearing someone like yourself talk about these experiences and normalizing it is I'm hoping going to fill them with positivity. And it's been lovely to talk to you, and I really hope
Pleasure.
You've got something from it as well. And yeah, we're just so grateful that you've given your time and you've talked about your experience with us.
Absolutely, my absolute pleasure. Really is. Thank you for inviting me on, and saying this stuff out loud. It focuses all of this stuff for me in a way. Once it's outside of oneself, it's easier to sort of look at it and put all of this stuff kind of into context. Yeah. For me, anyway, it gives me, it means I'm able to look at it and understand how I go about fixing these things, getting it outside of yourself, having these conversations. Takes some weight and pressure off. So yeah, it's been my pleasure to go and basically use your podcast as a therapy session.
If you're ever in the area and you want some donkey therapy, pop into Carisbrooke Castle. I'm sure.
Happy days.
I'll be happy to see you too.
Working with donkeys the last 7 years, I have saved hundreds of pounds on therapy fees.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
They're very good listeners.
Well, Si, thank you for hooking this up.
Thank you very much for applying. And really good.
Oh, mate, and so good to see you. It's been a very long time.
Yes.
Time is going.
Yep. Yeah, my 40th is looming large. So.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Wow, you don't look it.
Oh, bless you. I will definitely come back on your podcast another time.
Well, when you're in Marvel, as whoever, they eventually see that they need you in Marvel.
Probably be King Arthur, won't it?
Probably.
But no, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Yeah, it's just been wonderful, and it's been lovely to speak.
I hope that the listeners get something positive out of it, because it's been a really positive experience for me. So thank you. Liam,
Si, Tia, it's been an amazing afternoon of conversation. thank you so much for coming on. It's been fantastic. So thank you so much.
Well, from my point of view, thank you guys so much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.